Cycle. Some decks just refuse to let you breathe, throwing cards at you so fast your brain can't keep up. Cycle is all about speed. These decks run ultra low average elixir costs between 2.6 and 3.0, which means you're rotating through your entire deck faster than your opponent can even think. The whole strategy is built around spamming your win condition. Cards like Hog Rider and Royal Hogs over and over until their tower is gone. Even a mini P.E.K.K.A. can be used as a win condition in this deck archetype. You're not trying to build some massive push or set up complex combos, you're just hitting them with chip damage constantly while defending with the cheapest cards possible like Skeletons or Ice Spirits. It's basically death by 1,000 cuts, and your opponent can't do anything about it because by the time they deal with your Hog Rider, you've already got another one ready to go. The entire point is to outcycle their counters. They use their building on your first Hog? Cool. Your second Hog is already at the bridge before they can cycle back to it. They're spending 6 elixir to defend your 4 elixir push. Perfect, you just made a positive trade, and you're doing it again in 5 seconds. Cycle is crushing right now, and it's easy to see why. You've got decks like Royal Giant with Fisherman yanking defenders completely out of position, while Hunter shreds tanks. Then there's the classic Hog 2.6, that just refuses to die because the formula works: cheap defense, constant pressure, repeat until their tower is gone. These decks all share one thing: they excel at making positive elixir trades and punishing any overcommitment. You place a pump, they're sending Hog Rider to punish instantly. You drop a tank in the back, they're pressuring opposite lane before you can even support it. Cycle decks are beginner friendly because the concept is simple: play fast, defend cheap, repeat. But actually mastering them requires insane prediction skills and perfect kiting. You need to know exactly where to place your buildings to pull their tank away from your tower, exactly when to spell their support troops, exactly how to use cheap cards to reset charges or buy time. They destroy slow, clunky decks that can't keep up with the pace, but if you're facing heavy beatdown and your defenses crack even once, you're getting 3 crowned before you can blink. But spamming cards is one thing. What if you could literally trick your opponent into wasting theirs? Bait. You ever feel like your opponent is just playing mind games with you? That's because they are. Bait is psychological warfare disguised as a deck archetype. The entire strategy revolves around flooding your opponent with multiple low HP, spell-vulnerable units to force them into impossible choices. Do they log your wall breakers or save it for your goblin barrel? Do they arrow your skeleton barrel or wait for your swarm? Every decision they make is wrong because you've got backup. Once they waste their small spell on the wrong target, you punish them hard with massive chip damage from repeated goblin barrel connections or sneaky pushes they literally cannot stop. Buildings let you defend efficiently while cycling back to your bait cards, and the whole time, your opponent is just tearing their hair out trying to figure out what to spell. It's not about having the strongest cards. It's about making your opponent second guess every single play until they mess up and lose the tower. You're constantly asking them questions they don't have the good answers to. They see your skeleton barrel coming, and they're thinking, okay, I'll log this. But wait, you've also got goblin barrel and wall breakers ready. If they log the skeleton barrel, your goblin barrel connects for free. If they save the log, your skeleton barrel drops skeletons on their tower for huge damage. And even when they make the right read, you've got another bait card ready to punish. Bait is thriving with some absolutely disgusting variants right now. Wall breakers. Evo Ghost. Bait is insane because Evo wall breakers drop barrels that keep running to buildings even after the wall breakers die, meaning your opponent has to deal with them twice. Traditional log bait is still holding strong with the classic formula: Goblin Barrel for your main win condition, Princess for long-range poke and bait, and Rocket for spell cycling towers when all else fails. These decks live and die by baiting spells early, then unleashing heavy bait cycles and double elixir when your opponent has nothing left to answer with. You're not trying to take their tower in the first minute. You're setting up the perfect scenario where they've used log on your princess, arrows on your skeleton barrel, and now your goblin barrel is guaranteed damage. Bait thrives by absolutely destroying anyone who doesn't pack enough splash damage or multiple small spells. You're exploiting their deck weaknesses before the match even starts. But you get demolished by splash-heavy decks or tornado control that can group your units and wipe them efficiently in one go. Recent balance changes hit bait pretty hard with some key nerfs. So now you need hyper-precise timing and elixir management, or you're just feeding them positive trades. But even with the nerfs, bait can still create absolute chaos in the arena when played right. Speaking of chaos, what if instead of baiting spells, you just rush the bridge before your opponent could even think? Bridge spam. Forget strategy, just throw everything at the bridge and watch your opponent panic. Bridge spam is the archetype for players who have zero patience and just want to end the match as fast as possible. You're dropping dash troops like Battle Ram, Bandit, and Elite Barbarians directly at the bridge the second you have Elixir, forcing your opponent to react instantly or take massive tower damage. These troops bypass defenders by jumping, dashing, or just being so fast that traditional placement doesn't matter. You pair them with splash support to snipe units from behind or chain stun everything, and you run medium spells to clear their defensive troops mid-push. The entire playstyle is built around constant, unrelenting bridge pressure that forces your opponent into bad elixir trades while you counter-push off every defensive stop. They drop a tank in the back, you're punishing opposite lane immediately. They overcommit on defense, you're sending troops down the other lane for guaranteed damage. Bridge spam is all about tempo and aggression. You're never letting your opponent get comfortable. You're never letting them build a push. You're forcing them to play your game, and your game is fast, chaotic, and overwhelming. The second they make one defensive mistake, you're snowballing that into a tower. And even when they stop your push, you're defending efficiently, then turning that defense into another instant counter push. Current bridge spam variants are wild. You've got P.E.K.K.A decks using it as a defensive anchor, while Bandit and support troops create instant counter pushes. Evo Royal Hogs with Ice Wizard and Goblin Hut is another famous deck in this archetype, leveraging the Hut for constant chip pressure, Lightning to clear buildings, and Royal Hogs for bridge spam. Then there's the absolute madness of combining multiple building targeting troops for overwhelming pressure, like sending an entire army straight at their tower while range support keeps everything stunned. Bridge spam is perfect for aggressive players who want fast, intense matches where every second counts. You're strong against Cycle because you can overwhelm their cheap defenses with immediate bridge pressure and dash mechanics. But you're weak to buildings and air-focused decks that can just stall your ground pushes forever. Recent balance changes hurt some variants, so now you need flawless timing and prediction placement, or your troops just get shut down for massive negative trades. If you mistime your dashes or your invisible units go visible at the wrong moment, you're losing your entire push for nothing. But what if you didn't rush at all? What if you just sat back and let your opponent come to you? Control. This is for players who like to watch their opponents suffer while they casually dismantle every push. Control is the thinking player's archetype. You're not rushing anything, you're not taking risks. You're sitting back with rock-solid defenses, using efficient counters like Tesla, Tornado, Executioner, or Valkyrie to completely neutralize every single push your opponent throws at you. The goal is to generate positive elixir trades on defense, spending less elixir than your opponent while shutting them down completely, then transitioning to measured, though calculated counterattacks using chip win conditions like Miner or Goblin Drill. You're incorporating medium spells and cycle troops to keep your deck rotation smooth and sustainable, and you're constantly kiting tanks into kill zones where your defensive buildings and troops can shred them without taking tower damage. Control is all about patience, precision, and punishing greed. Your opponent wants to build a massive push? Cool, you're going to pull their tank with Tornado into your Executioner and wipe the entire support for 4 elixir while they spent 12. The key difference between Control and Cycle is who's calling the shots. With Cycle, you're abusing low-cost cards to spam your win condition as fast as possible. With Control, you're controlling how the entire game plays out. You're taking positive elixir trades and using that advantage to deal the slightest damage to their tower with cards like Miner. It's a defensive deck that relies heavily on placement and timing, not speed. Sure, during double and triple elixir, when you're dumping poison after poison on their tower, it might look like Cycle, but the difference is, you earned that position by shutting down everything they tried first. The entire strategy revolves around reading your opponent's plays and having the perfect answer every single time. They send Hog Rider, you're placing your building to pull it into the kill zone and shred it without taking tower damage. They send Graveyard, you're placing Valkyrie to spin and clear every skeleton, then you're defending their weakened push for cheap and counter-pushing again. In the December meta, Control is holding steady with some really solid variants, and the classic Mindtra Control deck is one of the most reliable strategies out there. This deck excels at gradually chipping away at your opponent's towers while defending efficiently. The heart of it is using Miner for consistent targeted chip damage that your opponent can't really stop, while cards like Poison, Log, and cheap cycle units protect your side and keep your elixir flowing. The whole point is to maintain elixir advantage and react to your opponent's pushes with solid defenses that cost less than what they're throwing at you. You're not rushing your attacks, you're controlling the tempo, creating counter pushes, and punishing opponents when they overcommit. This deck rewards patience, careful elixir management, and well-timed minor placements to secure slow but steady victories where you're just nickel and diming their tower to death while they can't break through your defenses. Control counters beat down incredibly effectively because you're built specifically to shut down big pushes and turn them into counter pushes for free. They spend 14 elixir on a golem push. You're defending for 8 elixir with perfect placements, then ascending miner on the opposite tower with their elixir depleted. But you struggle against hypercycle decks that can out-rotate your defenses, or bait decks that force you into awkward spell trades. You need deep matchup knowledge and experience to master control, because every placement matters and one mistake can cost you the game. But if you really want to make your opponent rage quit, there's a way to hit their tower without even crossing the bridge. Siege. Why risk anything when you can just sit back and poke towers from across the map? Siege is the ultimate low-risk, high-reward archetype. You're deploying long-range buildings like Mortar or X-Bow at the rear of your side, safely behind the river where your opponent can't easily pressure them, and just letting them chip away at the tower for free. The entire strategy is built around safe, sustained tower damage while you defend efficiently with troops like Rascals, Minions, and Cannon Cart, using Spells Tornado to pull their win conditions away from your buildings. You've got cards like Ice Golem to distract their tower or tank for your building, and your goal is to generate massive elixir advantages by forcing your opponent to overcommit on offense while you defend for cheap. It's patient, it's methodical, and it absolutely infuriates anyone facing it because they can't touch you. You're sitting on your side of the map, your X-Bow is locked onto their tower, and there's nothing they can do except watch their tower slowly disappear while you defend every desperate push they throw at you. Siege is all about building placement and elixir management. You need to place your siege building in the perfect spot where it can lock onto the tower, but also be protected by your king tower. You need to defend efficiently so you're always up on elixir, which lets you afford to place another siege building the second they deal with your first one. And you need to know when to go aggressive and when to play defensive, because sometimes the best siege play is just cycling rockets at their tower when you can't get your building to connect. The whole game plan is about making your opponent tilt. They're spending 10 elixir trying to reach your mortar, you're defending for 5 elixir with perfect kiting, and now you're placing another mortar and they have no elixir left. They're getting more and more desperate, making worse and worse pushes, and you're just calmly defending and chipping their tower down to 0. Siege performers are niche, but absolutely devastating when you know what you're doing. Take mortar decks. They're brutal because your mortar sits back dealing safe chip damage, while miner give the extra damage on towers or sneaks over to their elixir collector to ruin their entire game plan. Your opponent is trying to push, you're defending efficiently, and the whole time, your mortar is just casually deleting their tower. Then there's goblin drill variants that are wild because the drill literally submerges underground, pops up at their tower. Your opponent thinks they stopped it, but surprise, more goblins. And when your building pressure isn't cutting it, you just start rocketing their tower until it's gone. These decks demand precise building placement, perfect kiting to waste their elixir, and building those elixir leads. So when they finally try to rush you in desperation, you've got everything you need to defend and keep sieging. Siege thrives against aggressive spam decks that can't break through your defensive setup. They're throwing troops at the bridge, you're kiting everything into your defenses and getting positive trades, and your siege building is just free firing at their tower the whole time. But you get absolutely demolished by direct tank pushes that ignore your building and go straight for your tower. Siege got a nice boost recently with Avo Goblin Drill doubling those first goblins, so now you're guaranteed way more tower damage every time you place it. But here's the catch. Cycle decks can still mess you up by out-rotating your win condition and forcing you into awkward spots where you can't safely place your building. Suddenly, you're the one scrambling. Siege is for players who love methodical, strategic gameplay where every placement and elixir decision actually matters. You're thinking 3 moves ahead while your opponent is just trying to survive the next 10 seconds. And if you think Siege is patient, wait until you see what happens when someone decides to just stack elixir and build an unstoppable army. Beatdown. This is the ultimate I'm going to ignore everything you do and just run you over strategy. Beatdown is the most high-risk, high-reward archetype in the game. You're spending the early phases building massive elixir advantages, often using Elixir Collector, to stack resources, then unleashing colossal tank pushes with Golem, Lava Hound, or Giant backed by swarms, and splash damage that just demolish towers in unstoppable waves. You're tanking damage with your high HP win condition while your support troops shred everything behind it, timing your pushes perfectly in triple elixir when you can afford those 15 plus elixir pushes that just steamroll. But here's the thing, you need elite defense before you push, because one bad defensive stop means you're getting counter push for lethal. You can't just spam golem at the bridge and pray. You need to defend smart, build elixir leads, then commit to a push your opponent has no answer for. Beatdown is all about patience and timing. You're not doing anything aggressive early game, you're placing elixir collector, defending efficiently, stockpiling elixir. Your opponent thinks they're winning because they're chipping your tower, but you're not worried. Once double elixir hits, you're building that golem in the back, stacking splash and stun support behind it, and suddenly their tower is gone in 10 seconds. The entire archetype revolves around one or two massive game-ending pushes. You're not chipping, you're not cycling. You're building an army that cannot be stopped, and when you unleash it, the game is over. Your opponent can have perfect defensive placements, and it doesn't matter because your tank has thousands of HP while your support clears everything in its path. Current beatdown variants are absolutely terrifying. You've got golem decks stacking Baby Dragon and Valkyrie Evos that clear entire defenses while the golem just walks through. When these pushes connect, you're taking the tower guaranteed. Then there's Lava Hound Balloon combos applying air pressure that ground-focused decks just can't handle. These decks all share patient macro gameplay, perfect push timing, and synergy that makes them nearly impossible to stop once they get rolling. Beatdown dominates against Cycle and Siege because those archetypes just don't have the firepower to stop a fully committed push in triple elixir. They're cycling cheap cards, and you're just ignoring them, tanking the damage, building your unstoppable army. They're placing buildings, and you're sending your tank down the opposite lane, forcing impossible choices. You're only weakened by heavy swarm decks that can surround and shred your tank before it reaches the tower. But even then, with the right splash support, you're still winning. Recent buffs gave Beatdown more viable support options with cards that provide sustained pressure even after they're taken out. Evo support cards make your pushes even more devastating because they're clearing everything in their path. Beatdown represents peak complexity and skill in Clash Royale. When you nail the timing and execution, you're getting decisive, high-impact finishes that feel absolutely unstoppable. You're not winning by outcycling or outbaiting. You're winning by building an army that physically cannot be stopped. And that's every single archetype that defines how Clash Royale is played at the highest level. If you want more Clash Royale breakdowns, subscribe